My own background, I'm partner last 5 years with Deloitte, about 12 years, but 20 years in the tech industry. I'm quite technology focused, so my interaction board tends to be in with steering groups or trying to get funding. So look, I'm coming from that level. Deep technology background, started in financial services, all about kind of core systems change. Fortunate to work with some great clients, especially in the public sector, the likes of revenue, social protection, number of our banks. So core system change, all of those things that are pretty scary when you're looking down at it, and pretty scary when we're working up against it. But had the opportunity the last 4 years to lead out our cloud business in Deloitte Ireland. Actually, cloud is incredibly important to our business. We've been using it for 10, 15 years in technology, but we've been undergoing our own transformation, both in the services we provide to clients in cloud, but also adopting cloud ourselves. So look, this is where we're eating our own medicine. It's not just advice. We are on a global move to cloud. We are Office 365 and all of that collaboration tooling. We are removing all our data centers for all the right reasons, sustainability, cost, etc. So interesting to see us, and we've a dedicated cloud business globally, and I'm part of a wider leadership team. So really big focus for us and big investment area. So I suppose everybody's talking about cloud. It's not new. I'm sure you've heard the term, whether it was 15 years ago when Amazon started or 10 years ago when it really hit the market. Everyone's talking about it, but I think it has changed in terms of we really do feel like we're at a stage of really mainstream adoption in enterprise. We have loads of examples of companies that have been born in the cloud, be it Netflix, be it delivery services, etc. The cloud is now becoming a phase of across industries, be it public sector, financial services, private. There is a huge variability of where people are and why people are using it and how they're getting started. But I'd say the common theme is there are very few that aren't either experimenting or scaling. There are some that are mature, but it really does vary by industry and country. And Ireland is, and I'll go through some numbers, we're one of the fastest growing, but actually we're a little bit late to the party. But that doesn't apply when you look at our TMT technology sector. We have great companies that have been on cloud for 10 years, but our public sector, our core financial services are a little bit in catching up fast. Not a bad thing, to be honest, because we can learn from the lessons of many others. So it's just a little bit of, I won't spend long on it. IT spend, unfortunately, is still on the up and not going down. I think the digitization, so IT spend in general, but within IT spend globally, cloud continues to be a disproportionate category of spend. So it is the highest growing category within IT spend and looks like it's going to continue. The global market is staggering, and you can see that when you look at the big players in cloud, the Amazon, the Microsoft, the Google, the Alibabas. If you go to Asia Pac, they are a ginormous company with high double-digit growth every year and not slowing down. So look, adoption is all conquering, but still a lot to go. I think there's a huge spend in IT, and you're kind of talking about only 20% is in cloud, with that 80% up for grabs. Not all has to or should go to cloud, but I think there is a big proportion that will. So I suppose the message is, if any of your organizations aren't in cloud, they probably should be thinking about it. Look, it's not a binary decision. You don't have to go, but you're definitely thinking about it. If they are going to cloud, either experimenting, scaling, or mature, they're in good company, but there's always continual improvement to be made, and we might touch on some of the themes. So what is cloud? This is probably from a business top down. We'll get into a little bit at the bottom of the conversation, but 10 years ago, probably it started to life as technology you can get your hands on, not necessarily in your data center, and had advantages that were probably more technical. What we've really matured to as an industry now is actually cloud done right, done as an enablement to business transformation, with the whole enterprise fluent in understanding why cloud and taking advantage of the fact you can go faster, you can scale up and down. It is an enabler to genuine business transformation. So, we would say there's no business transformation without technology change, which you probably all know, but there's no technology change without cloud. Doesn't mean it has to be just on cloud, but cloud will have a role to play. Core element of strategy. There are some fundamental things that, you know what, I was given this presentation 5-7 years ago. I'd probably start with security, and we might have navigated the sense it is more secure. That has matured. You know, the reality is any enterprise with a data center of their own can only spend a small percentage of their annual IT spend on security. These are billion-dollar companies spending $1 billion on security. Their fundamental business, which is to provide IT services, relies on the fact that security will do more than any enterprise can do on their own. So there's a huge security benefit. That's not to offset the fact that, look, it can be done wrong. So just because you're given the tools, you don't swing it the right way. You can make mistakes as an enterprise, and also doesn't mean there isn't a lot of regulatory and compliance context to navigate. But ultimately, as a fundamental technology, it is more secure than on-premise, and that kind of has matured in the last 5+ years. I think, look, automation by default, doing things quicker, doing things easier, the fact that there's patterns to follow, you can scale up and down, they're probably what we call the technical benefits, all very important, but maybe within the IT organization about making the right technology choices versus if you can capitalize on the fact that there are new capabilities, new ways of doing it faster, quicker, you can really start to tap into some huge business benefits, and that goes into kind of holistic business case for cloud. We'll touch on some of that later. Across the bottom, and these are probably designed to, I'll voice over them, but I'll also send out the pack, and it's a pack that you can spend some time in, and you know, topics that you can follow on Google or give us a shout at. They're all sort of common business reasons why you would be stepping into cloud, and it's not one of those, it's probably many at the same time. This, and I won't try to detail it, but this is to give you a sense. I think it was over 1,000 CXOs were surveyed in a big US, and the US is a good place to look because they're probably 3-5 years ahead. Europe is catching up, but they were faster movers. They were much faster in the public sector with federal data centers, etc. But this sort of says, what are your top reasons? There's a lot of reasons to move for cloud. There's a little bit of variability across, but actually this goes to your business case and being clear on the why. And these are the organizations that are getting the most benefit. So these are said, we're delighted with cloud, and here's why we're using cloud. There is another list of organizations that say aren't as happy with their adoption journey, and they've probably gone in for different reasons. But you can see the majority of these are business reasons. They're not actually technical. So cloud for cloud's sake is a technology choice, has its place, but very limited business case. Tends to be an inefficient or dying data center or defunct technology. Actually, large-scale cloud adoption needs to be pinned to the business strategy. So cloud technology itself, I've kind of gotten permission to go bottom up, but I'll try my best to say, and I suspect you are familiar with many of these terms. But look, at its core, what does it mean? Like, you know, this has a hard drive. It has the ability to make decisions. Effectively, a data center just has bigger versions of this with no screens put in a rack, and you own a big data center with thousands of computers in it. Or in this world, an Amazon or an Azure have millions of computers across hundreds of data centers all chained together. In this model, you have probably everything from electricians to physical data center security people to servers and storage. They know the names of the servers, and they can tell you, oh, such and such an application runs on that, and oh, the disk went on that 6 months ago. To this, where it's truly commodity. Cloud providers don't care about individual servers. Like, we kind of use the analogy, your servers are pets over here, your mass farming on scale over here. They don't care. Servers die, they don't even replace them for months. It kind of goes on a backlog because they have so much infrastructure. You're renting a share of this, and you're sharing with other people. So you're buying a slice of it. You know, you don't have, we have our own Wi-Fi, and we use that to connect to the internet, but when we go on our mobiles, we're only sharing a little bit of the network for a little bit of time, and you're paying a subscription for that. It's similar here. So what's happened is that started as infrastructure. The source of it was, you know, Amazon were probably a big part of it. Amazon.com was taken off. They were like, I can't keep up. I need more data centers. Surely I can buy this. No, I can't. Okay, well, we'll do it. surely that some other people have the same problem. That's where it was born from. So they built it for themselves, realized other people needed the same service, and they started to sell it. And it grew from there. Started as physical box in the right locations. And then over the last 10, 15 years, it has grown into, well, it's not just about infrastructure. What if we put actual applications in there? And that's where we'll talk about the concept of industry cloud. So literally taking solutions that are business functions and you don't care where they sit and where they run. So still have everyone with me for now, yeah? We use an analogy. I'll fly through this, but effectively it's a bit, I'll go to the next one, but we talk about a house. So the different models, on-premise, your own data center, you buy the land or you rent the land, you build a building, you buy the servers, you then, that's your physical infrastructure, you put in the wires, you then put in your applications, you then write code to run on those applications, and you've invested that, you have development teams, you have your electricians, and then your business outcomes are built on that. Effectively, we have three models that are, look, there's a lot of subcategories within these, but you have infrastructure as a server, you have platform as a service, and you have software as a service, and there are three very common models in cloud. There are some extra ones you'll get, but at the fundamental, you can rent the hardware, and then you take care of everything above. So you rent your house, but it's empty, there's no furniture, the rooms aren't classified as bedrooms, and you decide what you do in each of those rooms. Versus when you can rent rooms, and then you can go rent furniture, and you kind of say, well, I'll take that, and I'll put that bed in there. So I start to furnish the house, and I make the decisions about the living space. That's you making decisions about your platform. Or you can say, I take a fully furnished house, it's been interior designed, it's all ready, so effectively I just move in and experience. Look, it's a crude analogy, but effectively you are deciding what service you buy. The more you take, well, the better experience. The closer you are to these kind of business experiences, your life experiences, but the less choice you have. I don't like the sofa, well, I came with the house. So it's that balance to say, well, we all know you ring a furnished house and say, can I move out that sofa? You're going to get a very short answer off your landlord, no. So similar here, you don't have as much control, and that's where this goes to. So look, less control, more business functionality, infrastructure service, more control, but you do a lot more. So you still have to have networking, storage, server, virtualization people. So your IT op model, when you're operating infrastructure servers, okay, you might not have the electricians that you had before, you might not have the data center, but you still have people who know servers, people who know all of those layers. Some typical vendors I think everyone knows, I've already mentioned. When you get into platform, effectively these are all built on top of it, but this is, well, I want to write a piece of code, but I don't really care where it runs. So the concept there is you might have a developer, but they can take a container which runs, and patching is done by the cloud provider, security is done by the cloud provider, and you just write the code. When you move out to SaaS and you take things like Workday, ServiceNow, Salesforce, CRM, many vendors, well, actually, I don't need to code anymore. I don't need coders. I probably just need business analysts who can configure it. Or in some instances, you can partner with someone to configure it, and actually, I just need business users. So you can see here, you're just worried about your application. You're just worried about your data. Still got everyone with me? Any questions that trigger anything? Hope I'm not going over too much ground. These will be another concepts. So you'll hear about private cloud, you'll hear about hybrid cloud, and you'll hear about public. Public is the pure model where it's an Amazon data center, an Azure data center. You are not using your own infrastructure. Hybrid sits in the middle, which is effectively, I'm in public, I still have things on premise. In reality, the types of organizations you work with, they're going to be hybrid for a long time. There will be core systems that will stay on premise that are just too hard or not logical to move to cloud, and they still need to talk to each other. The talking of public, private, or on premise is hybrid. And that's when you get to later, we talk a little bit about strategies. That's the understanding to say, well, do we have a public cloud strategy? Do we have a hybrid cloud strategy? What is our cloud adoption? Private could be a little bit misused. That is the concept of, there's cool things happen here about how things run, and I won't bore you to death with that, but you can use cloud-like technology in your own data centers. But in reality, private cloud, if you have one data center, it's not really a cloud, but it's at risk of being a religious debate, to be honest. But it's just, look, think on-premise versus public, and they have to be managed differently. So, jumping into cloud adoption, I think to step up out of just cloud, IT in general, and IT organizations, I suppose, look, many of the organizations you're involved with have 20, 30 years of IT pedigree. Now, we talk about legacy and technical debt. We also talk about heritage. These are applications that have been the lifeblood of a business for 20, 30 years. But what's happened is, not unlike our home analogy, technology's moved on, insulation has come, solar panels has come, my house is no longer fit for purpose for my needs. Similarly with your IT ecosystem. And what's happened is, very often IT continues to grow in expense. You bolt it on more. It seems like it just costs more and more every year to keep the lights on, and the ability to transform, and it's really common across all IT organizations. 80-90% is spent on just keep the lights on, and we only have 10-20% capacity to transform. And look, cloud adoption is transformation, new digital applications is transformation, and unlocking that transformation capacity is hard, and that's a real challenge. I suppose demand from clients and end customers, relentless omni-channel, really what I mean is, I want to have the same experience whether I'm at the bus stop on my phone, or I'm sitting on my laptop at work, or I'm on my tablet on my sofa. I want to do it 24/7, and I want it to feel the same. That's not how we build our systems. We build big, heavy core systems, probably rely on desktop, don't transfer to mobile very well, don't talk to each other. And look, every IT is suffering. You add to that technical debt. It's now old technology, it needs to be upgraded. The cost of upgrade, it is, look, I've been involved in many business cases, they're hard to land. Saying, I need 100 million over the next 10 years. And they're like, what's the business value? Oh, well, nothing really. We're just upgrading the technology. Like, they are hard messages. The reality is they are real challenges. You have end-of-life products. You have software vendors saying, our future is cloud. That piece of software you have on your data center, you can't have that anymore. Go to cloud. Like, they are massive transformation programs to do that. And it can get a little bit lost in the practicalities and common problems. And then, look, people process. Quite naturally, the op models reflect the current landscape. But those skills, those processes, those governance are not future-proof to adopting cloud. So as you fix these problems, you need to change how you do IT. And they really are intertwined. So, like, that's when it gets quite, we can do a proof of concept in cloud in weeks, but it takes us years to do a full-on enterprise adoption of cloud where you move core systems and you move people, process, and technology at the same time. So, look, you can get caught up in the sales pitch of, 0 to hero in 6 weeks, and we'll have an active workload cloud, and you will, and it will be valuable, but you're not going to shift your enterprise. And I suppose, look, at your level in the board conversations, I suspect you're coming up against a lot of that. It's hard to unpick the business cases and is that technology for technology's sake versus enabling transformation? And it is hard to articulate. Look, I'm probably I'm guilty of bringing business case to the likes of it. It is hard because it's hard, and it is complex. And I think the more collective fluency around that, the better.
Just a question on those board level discussions and the transformation work.
Yeah.
In the group context, because we do have quite a lot of subsidiaries in Ireland, is a lot of their change driven locally?
Yeah.
Or is it influenced by group and some of it being pushed down at that group?
Great question. And it differs. Funny enough, we did some FS benchmark, and I noticed a number of FS board members in the audience. I would say the general model, purist, centralizes better. So the mothership decides and pushes it out. The reality is that always practical if Ireland has a subsidiary that was bought and has an older piece of tech that needs to go? Well, then look, it just needs to go, and that might create what we call a federated. Ultimately, you kind of do federated for a while with the view of getting to centralized. It varies. Also, the centralized programs are much bigger. So when I talk about individual business cases, if you want to do centralized, you're probably going from, we could add value in a year or two, to this is a 3 to 5 year centralized program. We're going to get our center of excellence in the middle, and then you have to set up the hub and spoke. So I would say blank sheet of paper centralized is better, but like all things that are better, they're probably harder to achieve, and you kind of have to acknowledge that different things need to move around them. You're seeing a real variety. Some companies that are maybe M&A based and have 50 acquisitions in the last 10 years, they probably have to accept we would never do an acquisition if we tried to bring technology together. So you're kind of saying it hangs from the strategy. But from a designing or cloud off model, if you gave me all the money and all the time, I'd be saying centralized is better, because then you know everyone's doing it the same way.
Sorry, Rory, but the challenge for the group subsidiary dynamic is the regulator.
Yeah.
Wants the board of the locally regulated entity to fully understand what the offering is from the group. If you go to the TSB in the UK, where the CTO was fined, and he took the word of the supplier that they could deliver on X. CTO informed the board, yes, he had asked him, it turned out they couldn't. Where does all the questioning come? Even in a group subsidiary to group, you know, when you've said, look, we need some staff, you don't need to worry about, you know, this is going to handle my group. And you've got group NEDs even saying, no, it's fine, we just flew in here, we're telling you it's okay.
Yeah.
Those things are gone.
No, totally agree. And and straight up, I didn't even touch on, there's different reasons. Like, group might decide, here's a set of principles, and we are using Azure, or maybe using GCP is a better analogy, and then you get to Irish group and say, you have a principle that says the data center must be on in the country. They don't have a data center here, and now all of a sudden you're now a forked. So it is complex, and look, ultimately, you know, the handshake between the local IT into the center and the understanding on both sides is critical to say, well, look, do you agree with the principles? Do you understand the principles? Have we had an opportunity to stress test those? Have you been able to, especially in the FS regulated world, have we had a chance to bring it? Transparently, the regulator themselves are in catch-up mode around it, like CBI themselves were regulated. Like DCB have only released their kind of guide rails and kind of said, cloud is good, here's your framework, but you need to go interpret that framework. So look, everyone's probably, and yeah, there is I think, you know, the risk of who's accountable in that instance is tricky, complicated, and obviously sitting in the room, sensitive, but there isn't, I think taking the word is not good enough. You probably say, well, look, actually, has the CIO stood up a mirror cloud center of excellence? Have they gone through the principles? Have they localized and validated, be it a 10 or 20 checklist? And ultimately getting a bit of help with that, because this skill set I've talked about, it's not rocket science, and I wouldn't lie to anyone. It is different, so it requires different skills. Like 4 years full time working in cloud, I'm still learning, you know. So tap it into that, what other organizations are doing, getting a bit of help. You will build the capability, but for me, if a organization was doing it themselves without either hiring, buying, or renting a bit of advice, you know, but you can go, you can build the capability yourself by going to the market, but I think making sure that there has been a level of investment in cloud fluency prior to making those decisions, as opposed to saying we have a legacy team who's just taking the word of group, I would probably be, hang on, have we really stress tested that? Runs into these teams, actually, I won't, this, you can have a little digest over a cup of coffee, but this point is, cloud is a journey. It isn't by IT for IT. It is really important to business. Top down, board down, understand why we're going to cloud, what we're going to get out of it. And there's many people involved. Absolutely core to it is, whether you call it cloud operations team, cloud center of excellence, you need to build as an organization a capability centralized with cloud, capability that they can then kind of bring that to the wider organization. There are different styles of center of excellence. They could be, we do everything and no one does anything. It could be, we set the policy and you're kind of empowered. And a bit like your centralized question, there's pros and cons to each. Very much a centralized set the policy, prove it and then empower with governance is probably the recommended model, as opposed to let each team stand up. So you don't want your data team with a cloud team, and then your applications team with a cloud team, and your office enablement. You want the centralized, are we all working to the same guide rails, hub and spoke kind of model, and I'm sure you've heard hub and spoke for different things, not just cloud. So look, this one says a lot has to happen with a lot of different actors involved. This probably was, when I was prepping, one of the ones that maybe you could reflect on as, I didn't presume I could write questions for you because I don't know your roles well enough, but these are prerequisites, things that will be important for successful cloud adoption, and maybe you could turn these into probing questions in your roles. So what are the most important things? First and foremost, like any change project, not specific to technology, you want executive sponsorship. So has cloud adoption made its way up and been properly discussed? How do you discuss that? Well, ultimately, you discuss that through the lens of the business case. Has someone really thought about the value? There are reasons why what we call lift and shift, take your current applications today as they are and put them in the cloud. That's done and is valid. Being transparent, we don't really do because we don't see a lot of value in it. It's a big commodity. And unless you're running a terrible data center that's inefficient or it's defunct and you need to get to the provider, the business case is low for that. Probably more about transforming as you go, adding business value, making adjustments. And there's a concept, I didn't include it because I didn't want to bore you to death, but the 6 R's, which is a real industry pervasive concept around like replace, rebuild, refactor. So as you look at your IT ecosystem, has the analysis been done, application by application, system by system, to say, is it a candidate for cloud? If yes, does it go as is? Do you change it as you go, or do you just replace it? And that's where you get into, should it go on IaaS? Should it be replaced with PaaS? Should we buy something else and just get rid of what we have? So that is detailed analysis. It should exist, and you need this to get to that. Now, you can do it obviously in chops, and you say, well, look, get your data team to do it, or that particular line of business use this system. They can do a siloed version, and that's valid. But ultimately, to be kind of saying at a board level, there are the things you'd like to know. Have we thought about the application assessment? What's a good candidate? Has that been elevated into a business case with a total cost of ownership? Business cases are tricky and we do them. And look, there isn't a formula, we get accountants involved, but ultimately you kind of do very practically need to look at what are you spending today, what's the business value, what are you trying to unlock? Inevitably you're measuring a bit of transformation as you go. The right governance, you have thought about the op model, which comes over here, that goes all the way up the board. There is a bit of a trap people fall into, tech for tech's sake. Oh, we stood up a cloud pilot, we're in cloud, we've put a data pilot out there as an example, but it's never really gone up and back down. It's part of a wider roadmap, and all of a sudden you have a bit of cloud and data, you have a bit of cloud over here, someone's adopted a SaaS application in finance because they're hurrying to fix a problem. They're all on different clouds. There's no overlying strategy that says, okay, we've made a decision whether we're multi-cloud or not. We've made a decision around our principles. There are common there are no-brainer principles that, look, we give you, but you Google them and they find them, the security and fundamental, but there are loads of decisions that have to be made that are right for a business, multi-cloud, for different reasons. In the FS space, and I have a little bit later, we might not have time to spend much on it, but concentration risk and, is it okay that I geographically manage that with one cloud provider, or do I want multiple cloud providers? And there's a lot of decisions to be made, and ultimately some of them are risk-based decisions. Op model, I've said, let's look the right people, organized the right way to deliver cloud strategy. Risk and security and risk management, non-negotiable, a lot of work. InfoSec, working with IT, to articulate the right principles, embed them in your governance model. Most organizations will have a mature IT delivery, but you need to kind of cloudify those. So some things you need to just inject cloud into the policies and procedures, other things you need new policies and procedures because of cloud, and then all your delivery teams, your operations teams, you need to manage in that framework. And look, migration is probably roadmap. So you've decided your strategy, it's gone up with executive sponsor, it's a clear business case, you've looked at your application, you have a plan, you have the right governance in place, you have the right team organized, and they're getting on with it. So I know that's at 1,000 yards, but I don't know, does that trigger any questions? There is a lot in this. And just to prove that, I don't intend talking you through this. There are many frameworks, Gartner's and others. This is a Deloitte one. This is probably just to give you a flavour of if we come in to do roadmap engagement, we effectively look across 8 key areas and we have to answer questions across all of this and make a plan for each one of these. So it's a framework for cloud op model. It's ours, but it's probably common with many leading ones like Gartner, etc. So again, you know, questions. Have we got a cloud strategy? What framework do we use to kind of articulate that? You'd like to hear that people have gone with a proven framework, be it Gartner or something equivalent, or you know, plenty of our peers in the industry would have similar. They're very common, best practice kind of aligned, and you know, different organizations have different focus. FinOps is always one. Economics, that everyone from CEO right down to IT can get on board and talk about, you know, we talk about keeping the immersion on. So you move to cloud, you have to then manage it, you have to look at it. It's like your phone bill. The cloud providers are in the business of selling consumption. They are not going to tell you to turn off the immersion. You have to manage that yourself. It's like the smart meter at home. It gives you data, it doesn't take action. So you need the technology foundation so that you can track finance, and that in cloud is cool to a point where you can tag individual services and say, right, that's linked to that application in that business, and you can surface reports to say, okay, that subsystem for finance was consuming this much cloud and we know why. That's great data, but you have to have what we call again, they're concepts, but a cloud business office. You need someone empowered in the organization working with finance to say, okay, we're looking at that monthly and we're making decisions and we're injecting actions back into IT to either tune it, turn it off at night, whatever it be. But so there's a lot. Fine, you don't need all of that for a pilot, but if you're going to be mass adoption, you need to have a pretty broad spectrum operating model with business people, finance people, procurement people, legal people, because cloud contracting again is different. So like again, I think have a little look at this when you have time when we send out the deck, which is a lot of topics to kind of think about.
Criminality and cloud. So if I'm just part of whatever business and I go to the cloud, I'm now part of a bigger community.
Yeah.
But I may not have been a target if I stayed in my own. But because this, whatever the provider is, one of the ones you mentioned earlier on, is there a risk of a serious event?
Super topic. So like, I suppose look, two sides. You're 100% correct. So I have security and anonymity because look, I'm not that important. I'm not that big of an enterprise. But the reality is that saying, you know, if you use the house analogy, you know, Asher, I'm only in a little two-bed who'd come knocking, but I leave my back door open. And the reality is, or maybe you don't leave your back door open, but you've a 30-year-old back door with a bad lock, and someone might size to kick it in if they decide to knock on your back door, right? So do you want to rely on the, sure, no one will ever come to the back door, versus I've given my valuables to Fort Knox? Would I rather my valuable in Fort Knox and it's a big target? Or would I rather a dodgy back door and no one's coming knocking? Now, I'm probably being a bit extremist, but it's a fair. Like, you know, and there's some things to say. It's an interesting one because it's not just security, it's also availability. People say, oh, well, I'm only small, and Amazon, if they have an outage, are going to bring up HSBC before they bring up my little insurance company. The reality is it's not architected that way. They're out. They bring it up all at once and no one gets any preferential treatment. It's similarly with the security. Their security is across their whole standard and you are getting the best no matter who you are. Now you can back it up as an individual organization because you still get keys and you cannot secure your little slice properly. But in reality, it's not that it's not a risk. I would say the prevention and protection is a lot higher and they will do more. And then there is the thing is that, well, if you break into Fort Knox, they're going to grab your gold. Who knows whose gold it is? So it's sort of, you have this level of anonymous within the cloud provider. So it's, yeah.
Are you just vulnerable, given that the cloud provider is there to make money and
Yes.
maximize opportunities?
Yes.
So if you put everything into one cloud very hard to get out of that sort of situation, I presume. So are you better?
Big topic. Yeah, we talk about vendor lock-in.
Yeah.
Firstly, I'd say, look, probably not a topic that any IT organization hasn't managed. Like, if you have Oracle databases or Microsoft databases, incredibly hard to get off those big migration projects. So, look, they're probably wrestling it already.
Yeah.
I suppose the difference with that is you kind of have the CapEx. I buy it, I sweat it for 7 years, and then I get into a big negotiation. I threaten to leave. So there's this sort of natural cycle that protects you a little bit.
Yeah.
Now, still, it's expensive to get off it. It is a real risk. You see the regulator dabbling in the area, especially in financial services around concentration risk. They haven't come out and said you have to multi-cloud because the consequence of that is very expensive. Trying to run the same application in 2 clouds.
Yeah.
You have to go so generic in what layer you run in cloud that you start to lose some of the benefits of cloud. So the more custom features and what we call native features you can take from the cloud provider, the better business value you get, but the more risk you lock in. So it has to be managed in strategy. You see people kind of make decisions around, you know what, for data I'm comfortable because you know it can always move and it's not that hard for migration and ultimately the data's king. For core systems, you see, well actually I might only containerize it. I don't mean to get too technical, but I'm not going to write my core system natively in AWS code because that's too risky. I'll write it either in a product that I deploy on AWS that I know could go in the future. So it's not one size fits all. It's probably about classifying back in that application assessment. So in the same way as a good fit for cloud, you start to decide which cloud and why. But ultimately, it is a leap of faith. It's a bit like, look, I bought my Vodafone contract for the year. I'm going to take a punt on it. I think the big challenge and not unknown.
It's not just for the year, you know.
Yeah, no, and look, the reality is, look, it's their contracts are tough, and when you get into the legal side, like the contracts are brutal. We up our prices whenever we want. That's in it. And you have to sign up to it. There's no negotiation. They don't change their contracts, but their history is cloud prices have only gone down for the last 10 years. Minor, 1 or 2 have gone up in the last while. They're bringing out new services, so it is a real issue. I think it comes down to have you an exit strategy. It won't be cheap exit, but look, if you're migrating from Oracle to something else today or whatever, that's not cheap either. I think it's that application assessment we haven't just blindly put in. We've put it in, we've understood why we're putting it there, and we understood the consequences getting it out. And then there is a bit of faith. It's a partnership. Like, you are really in partnership with cloud providers. You are trusting them with their data. You have a lot of obligations yourself, but you are ultimately trusting their physical infrastructure or contracting that they're going to be around in 10 years and they're going to be price sensitive in 10 years. And look, it is a leap of faith. And I don't have, they have a good record for 15 years for a business. If they've trusted them, they will. And there's enough big cloud providers that, and they are aggressive with each other. So if you're massive Microsoft today and you knocked on Google's door, said, I have 10 million a year consumption, they will pay for the project to move you because they're motivated to get the 10 million off you. So that wouldn't be painless in an organization, but it can be done, so.
The regulator talks about concentration risk,
but
I really don't understand the difference between a huge multi-jurisdictional organization with 3 data centers worldwide with business continuity built into it, and you go on with Amazon or Microsoft, and you're building contingency by getting different segments of the cloud in different data center locations. So I just don't understand there's any difference there. But the other issue is just looking at this. A lot of it comes down to dollars and cents, and isn't it the reality that even if I am this huge multinational, and I'm spending not tens of millions, hundreds of millions, maybe even getting close to the billion on IT and cloud computing, or not cloud computing, IT and security and so on, it's still only a drop in the ocean compared to what Microsoft and Amazon spend all the time. And doesn't it really come down to dollars and cents? If I want a certain level of security and accessibility and so on, there's only one answer. You've got to put it up in the cloud. Now, you have all sorts of issues in terms of access control, in terms of use of data, in terms of network and security and so on. That's going to apply whether you have a data center or your laptop or whatever. So I'm really struggling to understand why anyone serious about their business just isn't going to the cloud. Because to my mind, it just seems the logical solution, dollars and cents wise, security wise. Of course, there's risk. Any key supplier, there's risk, and the cloud vendor is no different. But we can't, even the huge multinationals cannot compete with Amazon Web Services or Microsoft Azure.
No, look, you can give the next presentation to start, but you are right. And look, I couldn't be that brave because I would be empathetic to the various spectrum of clients. But no, you're right. Look, and to a point, the IT industry has decided when you could only buy mainframe, and it's the only thing they answered, we all want mainframe. Now they're saying, look, cloud is the future. It suits them from a business model perspective. Why do they want all their applications in cloud? It's one version, and they're not dealing with 15 upgrades, 20 upgrades. Microsoft are no longer shipping out CDs. They're no longer selling perpetual license with 7 years, and you can decide, well, I'm not upgrading to your new version. They are now deciding what you run. You're getting a better service, but you're paying for it. So the reality is, it is probably a no-brainer. The challenge is dollar and cents for multiple things. It's not going to be cheaper. It will be more expensive and better.
But it should be cheaper, Rory, should it not, with the same level of security? So
sorry, yes, if you say, what am I getting versus what am I paying today, if you look through a security lens, I'll spend similar and I'll be more secure. Correct. The challenge you have is, and the business case of, can I fund my cloud by getting rid of my data center and doing it cheaper? That business case doesn't exist. But if you accept your IT spend is going up, and if you stay on premise, it's still going to go up. If you invest on going to cloud, there might be a bubble to get you there, and you're going to have to invest to transform. But when you get there, you will deliver more value, more secure. I'll have better delivery models. I'll be able to make changes quicker. I'll have more reliability. I can scale for peak, but not have to pay huge, especially for businesses, say, I have end-year filing, and I need to have a million submissions in a day, and then for the other 300. 54 days that I don't have to busy, but I have my servers flex to that. There are huge cost benefits and that sort of thing. But yeah, in reality, getting to cloud and getting as close to SaaS as practical for your business is a de facto answer. And yeah, risk, there is cost, but I think you will maybe spend equal or more, but you'll have much more value, not just security, you'll also have business value. Getting there is not easy. That's the challenge. I suppose maybe I'm trying to articulate that. A lot has to happen. You have a legacy IT that is nearly fully consumed running what you have. Asking them to transform your business via cloud and make all the right decisions is hard. And that's probably the real. If you accept you shouldn't be there, which you should be, but deciding what order and how to get there, I think is the thing where you can make wrong decisions as an organization, and probably making sure as this group feels confident, stimulating, have we made the right plans, have we got the right people in place? That's, I think, the real trick.
All right, isn't it also about connecting with your data strategy and ultimately how you expect to use that data?
100%. 100%.
You
you talk about cloud. You talk about cloud strategy, but over here you should have cloud. You should have data strategy. Massive. Ultimately, data is sacrosanct. You talk about applications, but the data they have, that's what you care about. And ultimately, that's a big part. But when we talk about security, you would do a lot of work around data classification, the types of data you have, what am I comfortable going to cloud, what am I not. Now, in reality, once you put any sensitive out there, you put everything out there. But I did have a couple of others, but there probably maybe more reads. This probably landed, which is, look, it's not just the CEO responsibility. Everyone should go out, the whole C-suite, the board. And what we've tried to do here is, I won't go through these, but actually in the appendix, we use this a little bit ourselves, but you can look through it. When you look at cloud, the CEO, the CIO, the CFO, the COO, chief risk, what are the sort of things they're worried about? There are some questions you can have a look through in the appendix. It's too much to present. And all this is look, cloud can solve problems for different leaders, but obviously presents challenges to those leaders. This is a little bit concentration risk. To be honest, I could ask our risk advisory partners come in here and do probably 3-hour session on this, but there's a lot behind it. There's obviously regulation in different industries. You nearly have to go with an industry lens on this, but the shared responsibility model is common. If you don't know what it is, please Google it, spend some time. There's loads of stuff, YouTube it, podcast it. Effectively, this is the overarching governance to say, what are you responsible for versus what is the cloud provider responsible for in the different models? And they are binary lines, and the contracts and the end user agreements hold you to that. And ultimately what it means is actually in a regulatory context, you're responsible as an organization for the stuff that really matters, which you probably already know. But we touched on concentration risk, the operation resilience, and the shared responsibility model. Cloud gives you loads of tools to help you with business continuity, help you with concentration risk. So you can answer your concentration risk obligations with cloud in terms of your massive access to geographical diversity. I can have my core in Dublin across 9 data centers. Like there's data centers you don't even know about that are in Ireland from the 2 biggest cloud providers. Frankfurt, you can have all sorts of backups that are very, very powerful business continuity. Look, someone has to be looking at that and they have to make the right decisions around it. It's a lot of work to get there. So look, those tools, but you have to manage this both from things change because you're adopting cloud, but also cloud provides an opportunity to enhance what you're doing from a risk perspective. So I know I've flown through and no time's against us, but are we a minute if there's any glaring questions or
You touched on exit strategy.
Yeah.
Like that's from a regulation sector point of view, it's huge focus on what your exit strategies are. You talked about the difficulty.
Yeah, well look, it's not the difficulty. Yeah,
What
it's
would you thinking that you should be looking for in terms of an exit strategy?
yeah, like I think maybe exit's probably the wrong word, future migration strategy.
Okay.
So the likelihood is if you're putting a core system in cloud and it's critical to your business, there's no exit. You're going to run that system forever unless you replace it. So in the future, be it 3 years, 5 years at a renewal or whatever trigger in the business is that you want to part ways with the cloud provider. Maybe you've done a big commit. What happens is you see it in the industry, like I've dabbled with cloud and 5 years down the line, I've played across a few, and now I've done a deal with one of the big cloud providers that says, well, if I spend 10 million a year with them, they're going to give me 15 million consumption. The interesting thing about cloud, it's not like our ESB. You can't go to them and say, can I get a lower unit price? They don't do that. But they do big discounts and say, well, if you promise to consume 10 million, I let you consume 15 million for the 10. But you pay me the 10 million upfront, or maybe you pay it on a committed basis. So their commercial models are different. They'll also invest to get you. So not unlike, do you want a free smart meter? Do you want a free smart thermometer? Bigger versions of that saying, oh, well, you have a big data challenge and you have these ambitions. We'll pay for the team to come in and build your requirements, and you get what you want, but at the tail end of a big consumption bill. You could look at that and be cynical, but you can also, if you can navigate, there's a lot of benefit in that. And if you're going to cloud anyway, why wouldn't you use the funding to help you get to the right cloud provider? So navigating that to make sure you're making the best commercial. But look, ultimately that goes back to you have to make decisions to invest in the applications and the systems on a chosen cloud provider. Down the line, if you change your mind, I think understanding how you would get off it, well, the likelihood is it's not an exit, it's probably a migration to another. SaaS protects you from it. Like when you're buying SaaS, if you've Salesforce, if you've Workday, you're already in the cloud. And like they're doing it for you. They don't all have their own cloud. Some of them are running them depending on different regions. So it runs they've partnerships with the cloud providers already. They've done those big commit deals. So it's very much a multi-layered complex matrix, but actually not hard to knit your way through when you're looking at a specific area of business or a specific system. But yeah, I think it's just that you've considered it. Your legals know that it can be terminated and there's no gotchas. Your procurement people know how you might go about procuring an exit. Your technology people have thought about, well, we've used this particular AWS function and yeah, that doesn't exist in Azure, but we kind of know we could re-platform. It's not that big of a deal.
walking through that kind of checklist.
Yeah, and it goes back to that application assessment. They're big buckets, a lot happens underneath them. Yeah.
That's amazing.
If people have just one more question.
Oh, as many as you want. I have a buffer, so it's more in respect to your time. So I'm more than happy to chat.
No, I know that. So obviously you're going to talk about AI in a few weeks' time.
Yeah.
Some of your colleagues or whatever. But if a company feels that AI offers great possibilities, does that need to go hand in hand with the cloud strategy?
AI is cloud.
Yeah.
So if you're doing anything in AI, if you've been on ChatGPT or any development teams, that is all cloud. No company could afford to build the data center compute power you need to run those sort of things. So cloud has enabled not only different business models, but it's enabled different technology capabilities that for brief moments in time you need staggering compute power, and then you don't need it. And that's why cloud allows for those models. So look, yeah, I think when you look across different and gentlemen at the lead really asked a good question about it's de facto choice. It is even more de facto. It is not possible to do AI really to the level that we're all looking at in terms of hype, which is true, unless you're cloud. And even I would say wider, if you trying to do anything big in data, be it you're the CBI and you're trying to do the new CCR and it's coming through, cloud is just better. There's better scale, better cloud data capabilities. When you're building your own applications, you can still have a bit of a debate to say, well, if I'm building it from scratch, well, I can have a debate about on-premise being a good fit. But if you're buying services like AI, like Office 365, like Microsoft are just saying, look, the future is cloud. You know, you're not going to be able to buy a non-cloud version of the likes of SharePoint, all the collaboration tools we use within X years, and they're not alone. Like Google, there isn't many competitors to the Office enablement. So the reality is, many of the organizations you work with could be in Office 365, so they're already in cloud. It just happens to be their internal systems.
Just very quick. Yeah. What about the man or woman in the street saying I'm working on my own computer? Is that going to work on into this stuff as well?
Yeah, well, so like I have a laptop and I have an operating system and that, and I VPN into Deloitte. There are concepts where we may have, really like Chromebooks that effectively my operating systems are running in the cloud. And that is a concept. I don't know if any of your organizations did VDI, but like virtual desktops, like they may or may not have it. AIB have it, for example, and Deloitte have it. But, that is moving to the cloud. I think we already are. Like, the reality is if you're rocking around with this, you're in the cloud, iCloud. Everything in this is underpinned, all your updates, all cloud. Same with Android. If you're using Gmail at home, you're cloud. If you're using like Sky Go, you're cloud. If you're using Netflix, you're cloud. So the reality is we probably don't realize that 80-90% of what you're using at home is cloud-based. Alexa speakers, everything. Like if I'm a software provider and I'm trying to get into household market, energy sector, for example, I have a cool new sustainability. I'm going cloud because it's the only practical way to get on everyone's device is to use a cloud backbone. And then you're making choices about, am I doing it at an infrastructure level, am I doing it at a passive thing, and a software. And in reality, from an operations perspective, the closer you get to SaaS and the less you do, probably the better. But the area being, if I can't buy what I need in industry because no one's thought about it because I'm unique, you might have to build some stuff yourself. No, you are. Your car, if you have a relatively new car, your car is probably connected to the cloud, you don't even know it. So, yeah. Which stuff? Well, it is actually amazing because this is sort of the software with the device side. It's like, you hear in the news of Vodafone are killing 3G, 6G coming, and IoT, Internet of the Edge, like that stuff is really what, revolutionizes certain industries like manufacturing and stuff like, we talk about digital twins of factories. That is all happening. Mirrors, because you have physical devices that can effectively mirror or digitally mirror the physical world because we have enough data points, you know, the body worn cameras for guards, all of that. That will be cloud. You know, there will be a cloud brain behind all of that. That's the only way you can process that volume of data. So look, it's around us. We don't always know it.
And I mentioned it earlier on, the criminal side. How do you feel about that?
Oh, look, like, well, firstly, the criminals are using cloud to massive advantage. Like, there is, you know, I like, and obviously I'm very passionate about this stuff, but like, there are networks that we don't even know exist around, you know, blockchain and highly secured communities online, some for criminality, some for other distasteful reasons. But like, you know, there is a negative side to a lot of it. And, you know, thankfully for many of us it goes on. And, you know, they had burner phones, they had, you know, back in the dark ages, they had different smoke signals. So they've always found a way to use the latest communication to enable their networks. I think that's a reality of it. I think if you look at that from an enterprise perspective in your roles, it's probably more about cyber. Like cyber, I try not to spend too much time on it because you get yourself fairly depressed, but like there is in the community, they talk about nation states. So like there's categories of actors. And look, you know, flavor of the month. If a Russia wants to crack your enterprise, they will. There is nothing you can do. Nothing. If Russia want to get into your house and electricity, you know, to your house, they will. Then you get into categories of, well, look, I'm probably not that important to them. And then you're into, well, actually, have I got a dissatisfied customer? Am I a target of some political, you know, I'm a healthcare, it's COVID, people are pissed off with healthcare, I'll attack healthcare. So there are other categories then you come down, and then you're into, you know, your defenses against that and having kind of realistic investments where it makes a difference. Cloud helps you probably elevate the bar, but like still you're into 90% of data leaks are a human does something stupid. You know, if we don't click the links in the emails, the hack won't happen. So, you know, you get into this blend of the world. And look, cloud puts more tools in the tool belt. You still need to use them, and you use them in the right way. But look, exciting time obviously for the industry. I'm in really exciting, but a lot to navigate as well. A lot of risk. Look, there's for all of these things, we're opening up bigger risk profiles as individuals.